All right, let's get started. Hello, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are viewing this from. I want to first off thank you and welcome you to my final intern seminar for Tampa Sports Academy. My name is Esteban Morales, and I am a intern here at TSA with a strength and conditioning specialization, or interest, I should say. And this is a little bit of a passion for me. So without further ado, I do hope that you do learn something before anything. And this is the importance of core strength and stability for performance as well as injury prevention in baseball players. Now, a basic outline, it's going to be very straightforward. I'm going to try not to bore you to death, so bear with me, but I do want to try and teach and explain some things as basic as possible based off my background. So I'll go into who I am, my education, why baseball, why you should even potentially listen to me. Then additionally, we'll go into core and the implications for baseball players from a both injury prevention aspect as well as performance aspect. We'll break down some key definitions in terms of core strength as compared to core stability, how they're similar and help each other, but at the same time there are certain nuances with either one that you do have to pay attention to. We'll go into the anatomy of the core, what someone may refer to as the core and what they think of the core as compared to what actually core muscles are used when involved in the rotation or in a baseball swing. Then we'll go on and touch and go more in depth into the aspects of core for baseball performance, specific to rotation movement and bat speed. And then we'll slide over to the importance of core for baseball and injury prevention, specifically towards the lower back pain. And then finally, I'll provide you with a couple strategies of what I think could be good exercise implementations and strategies for both stabilization aspect, so anti-rotation, as well as dynamic movements for potentially strength and force generation. Then some final thoughts, and if you're still with me by then, I will let you all go. But without further ado, let's get started. So as you can see, this handsome young gentleman on the right-hand side is myself. So as you can see, baseball has always been a passion for me. Ever since little, I've always loved it, and it's had a great deal of influence on my life. It's had an influence even to where I decided to try and incorporate my education into it. So my bachelor's is actually in science, with a concentration in kinesiology, which just refers to the anatomy, or the study of human movement, as well as pre-health profession. To become more multifaceted and more diverse, I have gone back and further immersed myself with a Master's of Science with a concentration in exercise and nutritional science. Since human performance is multifaceted, I wanted to myself become multifaceted as well. And then specifically, why baseball? Why has it had this much of an influence on you? So it isn't the most physically demanding sport, but I do believe it to be the most mentally challenged at times in its own specific way. You can argue with me till we're blue, but I'm going to hold my ground on this. I will choose to die on this hill. But it's the only sport where, as Ted Williams, the baseball Hall of Famer and one of the greatest hitters of all time, has stated, where a man can fail more than a majority of the time, 7 out of 10 times, and still be considered potentially a great performer. So if you think about it that way, it's failing that many times and still being considered okay it's truly taxing, and it requires some sense of mental sort of fortitude. So that's why I love it. But going into the science background, why am I specifically talking about core? If anyone who has any sort of baseball background or knowledge knows that a baseball swing is very total body, from the legs to the feet to the arms. As you can see within here, you start at the feet, go up to the legs, go through the core into the bat with your arms and then follow all the way through. So why am I talking about the core specifically? Well, if we look at where the ball makes contact, that is the launching angle. And a majority of this phase is actually has the most involvement for core. So it is very important that without the core, you're not going to be able to get from the loading phase to the follow-through phase. So it is kind of the middleman, is how I like to refer to the core and specifically this launching phase. And it's multifaceted in what it does. First off, it has to transfer force and be very stable throughout the whole swing. But at the same time, it still has to generate some force to continue to launch the ball as far as possible. So it's multifaceted. The resisting of unnecessary force, which I'll refer to as the stabilization aspect, and then to help further generate force, which I'll generate to as the strength aspect or the dynamic strength aspect. So core for baseball players is pretty important and pivotal in terms of both injury and performance, which I'll touch on later. Now, progressing forward, we need to kind of establish some definitions and figure out what's the difference between strength and stability. Now, they relate to one another, but they're not exactly the same, but they're not also mutually exclusive of themselves. So it's important to distinguish between the two. Now, they both allow for strength, but in different ways. Now, when I'm talking about strength or dynamic strength, I'm going to refer to as the ability to generate force, as I said before. A good baseball example would be the ability to generate or increase bat speed. So the ability from going from point A to point B as quick as possible, as forcefully as possible. And usually greater bat speed equals greater force production. Now, stability is important to strength because when we generate this force, we need it to be as precise as possible, as I mentioned. So stability refers to the ability to resist force in unwanted directions. So if we actually refer back here, when we are generating this force up the legs into the core towards the arms, we don't want in this phase to be leaning back and the force going one way, going forward and the force going one way. We need it to go from point A to point B in the most efficient and powerful way as possible. So both are aid in the ability to generate this bat speed and this force for a more productive and powerful swing. So it's important that we distinguish between the two and note that there are similarities, or that they both play a role in their own unique ways. And then it's also important to note at the bottom that when the forces are misapplied, it does lead to a potential injury-related compensations or force extra strain on the spine, which I'll refer to later on in the presentation. Now, we have understanding of why core is important for baseball players. We have a distinction between core strength and core stability. Now, what are the core muscles that are potentially involved throughout a baseball swing? I do want to make the distinction now, so that way we kind of get it out of the way. Your typical six-pack abs are not the ones that are generally used within a baseball swing. So just because you may say, oh, I have six-pack abs and my core is already strong. Just because you have six-pack does not equate it to being a strong overall core or it translating directly to a baseball swing. And the common muscles that we see for those people or players that are looking to get a strong core based off the six-pack is usually the rectus abdominis, the transverse abdominis, and the internal and external oblique. And realistically, only one of those three will actually translate directly to a baseball swing based off their movement. We know that the rectus abdominis is involved more in flexion, which in a baseball swing there's some, but not as much. Transverse abdominis, kind of sure, but not as much. And the internal and external obliques, yes. And so it's important to know the difference, because when we are training and looking to improve ourselves for performance, we need to do it in the most efficient way possible. So what are some actual muscles that are more common muscles that are used in a baseball swing. They're actually, you'd be surprised, they're less commonly known, but they have many different aspects in the way they help. So as I mentioned, the external obliques, which we see around here, they're involved in side lateral flexion, so side to side, as well as rotation. The rotator spinae, which are right around here, very small muscles that attach to the spine itself. The movement is pretty self-explanatory to help with rotation. And then finally, the last of these muscles includes the multifidus, which are just below and attached directly to the spine and further down onto the pelvis, which help. And as you can see, if you think about where it starts, the baseball swing starts at the bottom towards the top, it goes in a natural progression from the multifundus to the external obliques all the way up to the thoracic spine until where it stops around here to the arms. So it kind of makes sense if you think about it, and it's important to note that these are muscles that are directly involved within the launching phase. So we have a better understanding of the core muscles used for the swing. So now what's the actual importance? We talked about it, and I keep on saying this, but let me kind of explain this to you a little bit more and kind of drive home this idea. So I have a question for you guys. The hitter to the left and the hitter to the picture to the left and right, we see two different players. We see gentleman Aaron Judge, 6'7", 282 pounds, a specimen of a human being, should be very strong, we would think, as compared to the average player. And then we have Jose Altuve, another excellent ball player. So just to paraphrase, just to state, these are both excellent ball players, but much smaller in stature and much smaller in weight. Who would be the better, more powerful hitter? Who would consistently be able to drive the ball further as compared to an average person? Science and most of us would normally state that it's the much bigger and taller player who would have a clear and almost impossible advantage as compared to these much smaller and less stature of a player in Jose Altuve. But is this true though? And the answer is a little bit it's a little bit complicated, but it's not necessarily true. Now, the reason for this is that a player like Jose Altuve has learned to use his core in a very efficient and powerful way throughout. So if we go back to the launching phase, we know that it plays a direct role in rotation force. And we know that force equals mass times acceleration. So while Aaron Judge may have more mass and is more forceful in his approach, Jose Altuve takes advantage of the other aspect, which is the acceleration aspect. And the faster acceleration across the axis of plane, or the transverse plane, and greater force production he's able to use. And this is directly from a corkscrew action that involves the core and increases his ability to generate force, which makes it comparable to that of a player much larger his counterpart. So I just want to bring your attention to this video of him actually taking a swing in slow motion, and we'll see that he loads up here, he loads the legs, so he's generating force, and then throughout it transfers through the core and very explosively goes up. And that corkscrew action is what allows him to generate that force as quickly and efficiently as possible. So it's, as you can see, if a player like Jose Altuve, who is given a distinct disadvantage from the start with a much smaller stature and less mass, and still is able to produce at comparable to a player as the caliber of Aaron Judge, it kind of says something about the importance of core for regular players who may have more benefit of having larger mass or stature as compared. Now, with this sort of increase in force production due to increased acceleration, it does lead to more force, but it also leads to potential for more injury. And as you can see, it is very violent in nature as it generates as much force as possible. So, as happens with all sports, injuries do happen. We do see here that there have been a large array that the arm injuries are justified in its research because of the amount of recovery time that's involved, usually greater than a year at times. But these are usually just seen in pitchers and not hitters. And so it may not be justified for hitters to kind of worry about this. Now, something that is justified is lower back pain, which makes sense from the muscles involved, which attach to the spine and usually actually affect a large demographic of hitters, position players, as well as pitchers. And it's usually an understated topic, but does provide key insight into the kinematic chain and some of the deficits that occur. And there's actually the studies that have been done do state that between 8.3 to 15% of the baseball demographic of pro and collegiate do suffer from lower back pain, and it relates to deficiencies within the core muscle strength. So based on this, we should almost shift focus towards core strength and stability. And referring back to the previous study of Wasser, we do see that these are the different aspects to which affect it, and most of them relate to topics or concepts that I've been talking about thus far. So decrease in dynamic strength, improper kinematic timing, so the ability to, this could be affected by the inability to stabilize the spine or muscles at a specific time, which causes for these improper kinematic timings, improper or increased mechanical loading due to poor stabilization of the spine, as you can see, too much flexion extension, as well as a reduction in range of motion and flexibility, which all have been lead to lower back pain. So it really does go to show that the core does play a multifaceted role throughout for baseball hitters, and that there are many different focuses throughout, and it's just not one size fits all for all baseball players. Now, with this, we should try and aim to improve and put a little bit more emphasis on the core. So how do we do this? So it should focus on two different aspects. The first of this, it relates to the stabilization aspect and the ability to efficiently and properly transfer energy from the lower body to the upper body while resisting unwanted force transferred to other aspects. The second is it relates to dynamic strength and refers to the increase in generation of rotary power, so across the transverse plane. The way to do this is based on the said principles, so the specific adaptation on applied demands. And to improve core strength and stability, the exercises should closely resemble those in nature and those in movement of a hitter's natural swing. So stabilization exercises should be anti-rotation to resist rotation at unwanted areas or unwanted timing. And then dynamic strength exercises should be looked to increase mass acceleration to increase force in a very similar swing or rotation way as compared to the baseball swing. Now, here are a couple ways that I think are efficient ways to train for the specifically for exercises. So one of the ways is in terms of anti-rotation. So a good exercise that I like to recommend is the peel-off press. So you hold the legs, you hold your arms out, you're looking to resist the rotation in a specific way to where the band's rotating, and it causes for the stabilization muscles of your core. And it's pretty similar to you can adjust it so that it's more similar to the pathway of a bat swing. Now, the other way would be for dynamic strength, would be something along the lines of med ball throws. Now, med ball throws, you can set it up in a shot put or scoop toss position, and it closely resembles that rotation force pathway of a baseball swing. And you can kind of progress and regress in certain aspects, so you can use a lighter weight for more acceleration emphasis or a heavier weight for more force production emphasis. Either way, have at it, kind of toy around with it. It's a good way to improve on the dynamic strength aspect. Now that I've hopefully haven't bored you to death, I do hope that I do want to couple final thoughts that I want to drive home to you. So regardless of baseball level, I do want to kind of push that overall core strength is a good, solid way to start and should be established as probably the foundation for almost all baseball hitters if they want to progress and kind of achieve that next level. Now, overall strength is important again, but it's too important to be overlooked and not to pay extra attention to it. So it does need to focus on both aspects, both the stabilization as well as the dynamic strength aspect within a certain plane. So remember that it does need to be specific towards the baseball swing. So the transverse plane. And something that I do believe that relates to both strength and stabilization, and both the performance and injury aspect, is that you can't play if you're not strong and you're not performing, but you also can't play if you're hurt. So you do need a healthy balance between the two. You want to increase performance, but you also do want to be able to perform when called upon. And there's many different ways to accomplish this. So those are just 2 exercises that I kind of pointed out, but there are plenty more that are across the you can find on the internet, and plenty of different good platforms that do provide good, solid information throughout. Now, if I still have you with me and you have any questions, by all means, feel free to reach out to me. I am usually here. My office is non-existent because it is the front desk at TSA. But stop by. I'll be happy to answer any more questions that you may have. And I do really appreciate everyone for listening. And I do hope that you learned something that you are able to take with you towards your goals. Have a good rest of the day, and